Have you ever been in an argument? One that maybe you didn't quite respond exactly in the right way because, it was a hurtful comment that was said to you. I know I don't always respond the right way or react in the right way. What about you? Are you always right? Don't answer that. We have been talking a lot about messy family relationships. You had Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Abraham and Sarah, then Abraham and Isaac. They're all a mess. And seriously, these stories can rival anything we can watch on a big screen or a soap opera, anywhere. And the Old Testament has always felt a bit unrelatable to me until I got to be a part of a discipleship Bible study here. And it was amazing. It was a couple years ago. We took our group through the Old Testament, but it also relates to the New Testament, and as well as our lives today. And if you ever get the opportunity to do it, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it. And we used this study, the discipleship study, alongside of the Bible Project, which are videos that are very cartoony, but they kind of help give that over. So some modern day explanations. And today we continue to talk about siblings. And we're talking about parent choices and sibling choices. And what I'm guessing is the best stew recipe ever. And what we're talking about today is Jacob and Esau. So one was a skilled farmer and hunter. He was a bigger guy than his brother, and apparently he was very hungry. The other was smaller in stature and enjoyed hanging out inside the home. He was a little more domesticated and pretty smart. And I needed a way to keep these brothers straight in my own mind. So for today, to help me, and maybe you, understand these brothers a little bit, I thought this could help visualize maybe what they could have looked like or maybe behaved like. So if you're not familiar with Marvel, you have Thor and you have Loki. They are brothers. And then we'll do the next slide. This is Esau, and there's Jacob. You get the picture? One's a little more honest, one's a little more devious. I mean, he's mostly honest, and he's mostly devious, but they kind of, I don't know. Anyone else watch Marvel? Yeah, I know. Maddie made us watch all of them, and they're really good if you like fantasy stuff. Like, not everybody likes that, right? So one is very strong, mostly honest. One is cunning and mostly devious, and always portrayed as the good guy, and one is clearly the bad guy. And one thing you learn about the Marvel Universe is everyone has a backstory, and just about everyone is going to get a movie or a TV show made out of them. So anyway, back to the real siblings we're talking about, which is Jacob and Esau. They are arguing over something that is kind of foreign to us today. And at the center of their issue is called a birthright. We can go to the regular screen. I mean, Thor's good, but there we go. I didn't say that in front of everybody, did I? Anyway, a birthright. So a birthright is given to the firstborn male in a Hebrew family, and Esau was born first. And these brothers are twins. One had to come out first, and Esau was the oldest. But Jacob came out holding onto Esau's heel. So these two brothers were actually battling and going at it each other in their mother's womb. So this has been going on before birth. And the culture of the time was very tied to what the male was born first, and this is no exception. The birthright was an honor given to the eldest male to have the full leadership of position in the family, as well as getting a double portion of inheritance. So you can see why this might become an issue. These two brothers have this hanging over their heads for their entire lives. So we're going to read their backstory. We're going to go to Genesis 25, 21 to 26. I'm going to get my glasses just to make sure I read that right. So Isaac pleaded with the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was unable to have children. The Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and Rebekah became pregnant with twins. But the two struggled with each other in her womb. So she went and asked the Lord about it. Why is this happening to me? And the Lord told her, the sons in your womb will become two nations. From the very beginning, the two nations will be rivals. One nation will be stronger than the other, and your older son will serve your younger son. And when the time came to give birth, Rebekah discovered that she did indeed have twins. The first one was very red at birth and covered with thick hair like a fur coat. So they named him Esau. And the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel, so they named him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. Okay, so Rebekah and Isaac are parents to twins, and he's 60. That just, nope. And as the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter. He was an outdoorsman, but Jacob had a quiet temperament, preferring to stay home. Isaac loved Esau because he enjoyed eating the wild game Esau brought home, but Rebekah loved Jacob. One day, when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home from the wilderness, exhausted and hungry. Esau said to Jacob, "I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew." And this is how Esau got his other name, Edom, which means red. "All right," Jacob replied, "but trade me your rights as the firstborn son." "Look, I'm dying of starvation," Esau said. "What good is my birthright to me now?" But Jacob said, "First you must swear that your birthright is mine." So Esau swore an oath, therefore selling his rights, all his rights, as the firstborn to his brother Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread, lentil stew. Esau ate the meal, then got up and left. He showed contempt for his rights as the firstborn. This is a story that gives me more questions than answers. Have you ever done that with the Old Testament? So my first question is, how could the father only love one and the mother only love the other? And it was known because somebody wrote about it. What exactly was Esau's last meal? When was that? Because that might determine about just how hungry he was. Was Esau actually on the brink of starvation? It's kind of a big decision to make just when you're hungry. And I don't know about you, but are you curious as to what that stew recipe is? Because it's stew. I don't know. Lentils must be pretty good. Just saying. But when Bill and I first got married, we had a tiny little one-bedroom apartment that was filled with new-to-us furniture. That's what we called it. Actually, I called it early attic. If you were giving it away, I was taking it. We had nothing new in the house, and it was fun. We had so much fun making that tiny little space our own home until we had our first argument. Bill was more inclined to take everything in, and sometimes if he saw something that bothered him, he just took it all in. I, on the other hand, if I saw something, I said something. So you can see how this might become a problem, and one day Bill kind of had it with me and exploded a bit, and then he said, "You did this, you said this, and 3 months ago you said that." I didn't remember what I did yesterday, let alone 3 months ago. We hadn't learned how to communicate properly yet. And I was wearing him down with constant criticism, and he was building up walls and many defenses that all came out at one time. Not to worry, 28 years later of marriage, we communicate perfectly now. And you know that when any relationship they are new, they're wonderful. We only see the best in the other person. We only have fun things to share or our most favorite memories to talk about. We give our very best, especially in the beginning. But then there is times as the relationship progresses, especially during a disagreement, when disappointments happen, words are said, feelings get hurt, words get misinterpreted, more feelings get hurt, and it becomes this vicious cycle. Sometimes what we argue about never has the opportunity to get resolved. I've been there, and I'm sure you have as well. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you say, there's always a comeback, or a reason, or an explanation. How do you get past breaking that vicious cycle? And from what we read in the Bible, Jacob and Esau didn't discuss their feelings. We know just from the text and their actions, these two just did not get along. They are so very different. And the one thing we do know about Jacob and Esau is their parents played favorites. And I know my kids have always joked about which of the three is the favorite. They all think they're the favorite, which that's a good thing. And whether you have a brother or sister or you don't, you know what playing the favorite in competition, always thinking that someone was trying to hurt them or go against them, always thinking they had one parent in their corner and not the other. And this all started before they were even born. Talk about a damaging relationship. Their circumstances are what started their problems with each other. And this time the phrase blood is thicker than water doesn't quite always measure up. These boys did not get along, and let's face it, Mom and Dad didn't do anything to help that situation. Sometimes our family is some of the hardest people to get along with. And why is that? Well, they know you at your best. They know you when you're tired. They know you when you're hungry or hangry. They know the good and the bad. They know you best when maybe you didn't get your way as a kid with a toy, or where to go to dinner, or who receives the house and the will. Biological families aren't the only one that have these issues. The people we work with, the neighbors on our street, the people within our church, we all have relationships. Some see us a little more clearly. We let some people see the very best of us, and some people get to see the very worst of us. And so Jesus asked a question from another set of brothers, which states that some nerves were touched on. This is when James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him, and they said, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do?" he asked. I'm going to stop there for a second. They told Jesus, these two boys told Jesus, "Do whatever we ask." Okay. So what do you want me to do for you, he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other on your left in glory." "You don't know what you're asking," Jesus said. "Can you drink the cup I drink or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. So Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." And when the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. James and John were trying to tell Jesus what to do and whatever they asked him to do. Jesus not only tells them how it's going to go, but now has to deal with the remaining disciples who are irritated with James and John for placing themselves ahead of everyone else. And what was Jesus' response to their ladder of success climbing? That they need to become a servant in order to become great. And this is what was missing in Jacob and Esau's relationship: serving each other, caring for each other, supporting each other. Question: how easy would it have been for when Esau came home from hunting to walk in, see his brother, and his brother just give him a bowl of stew? But Jacob saw an opportunity. He knew Esau's weakness, and he took full advantage of it. Esau disregarded something so precious as his birthright for something so basic. When we argue with each other and we hold grudges or we bicker, it robs us of a precious opportunity to be in community. Those rivalries and principles to stand on can cause rifts in God's family, in our families, and in our friendships. There have been many friendships destroyed over financial matters and politics, over life choices, over this, over that. You can insert just about anything. But that is removing something precious from your life and leaving you with nothing but basic niceties and maybe some politeness. It leaves you with a support system that feels like it's gone away, with a loneliness because I can't possibly share my innermost thoughts with them anymore. It's a rift that can become a Grand Canyon if you let it. Jacob and Esau's situation got so bad that Esau begged his father for his birthright back, and when denied, he tried to kill his brother. Then Jacob didn't learn his lesson of sibling rivalry and playing the favorites game, because he's the same Jacob who years later had many sons and favored one with a beautiful coat, which led that son to almost being killed and sold into slavery. Jacob and Esau did eventually reconcile a bit, although not fully. And we've talked so much about families, all kinds of families, and everything is not always terrible, but it's also not wonderful all the time either. Now, as a parent, I would love to sit these two boys down and say, no one is leaving this tent until we figure out this stew mess. I'm pretty sure I would have said it just like that. There's so many times that when disagreements happen, it's simply a misunderstanding. Not always, I know, but many times. Words are said and received in a manner because, let's face it, we don't always fully listen, and we tend to think of our response before the other person has even finished speaking. And as a parent, I have countless stories of my 3 children who are absolutely wonderful, incredible human beings, but when those 3 would get into a fight, it was like World War III broke out in our house. No one was listening. Everyone was yelling. Everyone was yelling and crying. It could have been all 3 at the same time. And everyone had a good reason for their hurt feelings. I can't possibly be alone in that situation. So when Bill and I would intervene in those World War III situations, it kind of would go like this. You're wrong, and you're wrong. We can't always be right, and we can't always have the right response to everything. And sometimes when we're completely right in a disagreement, it does happen, but a lot of times we can be wrong. We will say things in anger. And having 3 children sometimes means that someone felt left out. It doesn't just apply to brothers and sisters. I remember at times feeling left out of a group situation with friends. Sometimes coworkers all went to lunch without me. Or you see a gathering of neighbors and nobody considered to ask us to go join them on their party. But that's just it. Our feelings can betray us. We are only acting from our own perspective, and by what I'm seeing, I feel left out. Our feelings should never be our guide to our daily decisions, because let's face it, if we let our feelings determine everything, we wouldn't do more than half of what we felt like doing. Let me say that again. We wouldn't do more than half of what we should be doing because we didn't feel like it. And Jacob, for some reason, felt like he should have the birthright. God promised this family a lot of things. Maybe Rebecca kept telling him how smart he was and how he should be running the family. Maybe he could see that Esau really only wanted to be outside hunting and not in the temple leading the family. What we do know is that Esau felt hungry, and it led his decision to give away something that was so precious because of a feeling that changed, as they so often do, because he later on begged his father for the birthright back. Have you ever turned away something so precious to only regret it? God has given you a birthright. You are the child of the everlasting God, the creator of the universe, who is the Alpha and the Omega. He has given you the ultimate gift. No matter if you're the oldest child, the middle child, the only child, the youngest child. Your standing in this world has no bearing on this gift. And this is where we need to place our focus this morning. Because for God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him will have everlasting life. God loves all. and not just the Billy Grahams and the Mother Teresas, but not just all the people who do the right thing all of the time. He loves all, no favorites. And so many times Christians have joked about and made comments about, I'm going to get the size of the mansion that I'll get someday in heaven, right? I don't actually think it's a real thing. What I do know is that God is preparing a place for those who love him, and that place is a home with him. And whether we have a room or the grandest palace, all of that will pale in comparison to actually being in the presence of God, the actual presence of Jesus Christ, and living and walking with them daily. So let's leave the sibling rivalry where it belongs. Nowhere. You aren't better than your neighbor because you believe in God and do good things. You simply have already accepted a love that was freely given to you without any strings attached. Esau never appreciated his birthright. And Jacob really shouldn't have had it either because he swindled his brother for it. Isaac and Rebekah created a home that couldn't foster care and respect and love for their children. Families mess up. And yet God still worked in their lives. He built nations. Jacob's name was changed to Israel because he built a nation from a swindler. And this morning, that's good news because we don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have it all together, not only for God to love us, but to be in his will and part of his family. And again, you hear people that say, I can't possibly go to church. The place would go up in flames if I walked through the door. But a church shouldn't be that. A church isn't a place just for the pious. A church isn't a place for just the rule followers or for those who have it all together or the people who only do the right thing. Church is for those who've messed up. Church is for those who've made bad choices. Church is for those who yelled at their kids this morning. Or some other car on Route 42. Church is for those who are battling addiction or anxiety or depression. And this morning we can lean into the hope that if God can love and use Jacob and Esau and Rebekah and Isaac to do great things, don't you think he can do that for you? Questions are good. I like questions. Would you say that you have a relationship with God? I mean, a real relationship. Conversations with him, respect for him, community in him. What family member or friend relationship do you need to lean into today to clear the air? And have you accepted your own precious birthright as a child of God? Or have you passed it up for something less? Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for this time together. Lord, help us to lean into you and what you teach us about love and care and respect. And help us to further that with each other and in those relationships that sometimes can feel the hardest. Lord, we thank you for your precious gift that you've given to us. Help us to never disrespect it or want to throw it away. It is ours as a child of yours. We thank you so much for this morning, Lord. In your most precious name, amen. You have those disagreements, and they will come, or maybe you're in it now. If it's especially with a family member or a friend or somebody that you've been trusting for years, know that most of the time these misunderstandings, there's love behind it. And even though they say something hurtful, it's probably because they're passionate. They want to engage with you. They want to fix something. They want to help. Look to that first. Go back to the root. This is somebody I care about. This is the life we've built with them. And start there rather than the hurtful comment.